Now, distinguished guests, welcome back. I've decided to start without Bala. He's probably outside mingling, just like James Brown. And on another note, our scheduled lunch is about 12 o'clock, and now we have arrived to our second topic of today, technology, the X factor to scaling. And the first speaker on that matter is Mr. Scott Caruso, sorry about that, the founder of PureColor Inc., a company that's currently disrupting the wood finishing industry. And I don't know about you, but I'm all ears. The floor is yours, Mr. Scott.
All righty. So first off, check. All right. Hopefully you can hear me. I really don't want to be behind the podium. So Bala asked me to go ahead and...
Let me see.
Check.
Sorry about that.
Can you hear me without it? Is that all right? Am I loud enough? Bueno. All right. So Bala asked me to...
Please release me. Let me go.
All right. Bala asked me to share my entrepreneurial journey, and I think the stimulus for him was how did I go from being a software techie geek to something where I'm suddenly representing and selling wood stain. And so I'll start with just give you a quick bit of background. I am a geek. I've actually I started playing with computers back when they were done with paper tape and punch cards. Graduated to things where we actually could use a terminal and then ultimately PCs. So I've been exposed to computers for a very, very long time. And in fact, I was thinking about when the president was talking about, he was talking about the early 90s, and I started programming in the 70s, and I was like, wow, I didn't really realize how old I was. The other thing that's really been kind of reflective for me in putting this talk together was a recognition of how many times I've fundamentally reinvented myself. And it seems to be a pattern. And it's okay, it's good. It's actually something I think that entrepreneurs have to almost accept about themselves, is they got to be willing to accept constant change, even in their own personal life. So I have my degree up there. I have a Bachelor of Science in SPED and EE. And most people, if I never have to explain what that is, and in fact most people don't know, but I actually have a degree in special education and elementary education. So I went to school to be a teacher. And ironically, even though I started as a teacher, I ended up going into the computer field. And I did actually spend time in the classroom. I got the degree. But the thing that really captured my imagination, the thing that really drove my curiosity was computers. So I started off programming at the university, working at the university. The topic I really wanted to talk about is disruption. And actually I thought the president did a great job of articulating how much disruption he has seen in just the past 20 years in Iceland, and how much it's affected the global economy and the whole ecosystem of entrepreneurship. So this is my mental model. I really think of disruption being at the intersection of three components. It's innovation. I'll talk about innovation in lots of different forms. It's timing, and that's the one key factor. And then it's entrepreneurship. And what I'm going to try to do very quickly is step you through my kind of background, my history, if you will, and then the conclusions. So I began at New Mexico State University. It's a university in southern New Mexico. And the first key innovation that came to me was I was working in the computer science department, and I was handed a box and a phone number. And I was said, go figure out what this is all about and follow up on this project. Well, it turns out that box was a modem, and the phone number was to White Sands Missile Range, which was one of the nodes of the ARPANET. And my job was to go install and connect the university via the ARPANET, which is obviously the predecessor to the internet. And the thing that was really interesting for me is that was a light bulb moment. The day we got connected, my ability to email people changed from just within our university on our small network of systems to suddenly I could email my aunt and uncle that worked in Bell Labs across the country. And the communication was instant. And it was eye-popping, revolutionizing to me. And this is in the early 80s, so it was one of those things where I could see communication was going to change forever. It was going to go from a letter to instantaneous like that. And it didn't take much. So the real thing here is that thought pattern was really driven from an irreverence in terms of the entrepreneurial mindset. I was completely irreverent for how communication was being done today. And in fact, I stopped writing letters. And I would communicate with people as it became available on the internet. From the university, I moved to Sun Microsystems. Now, when I joined Sun was less than 5 years old. And in fact, a lot of people today, the younger people in particular, probably don't even know who Sun is anymore because they were acquired by Oracle. But the thing that was interesting about Sun is that it was my first exposure coming out of college, my first exposure to what a successful entrepreneurial culture could really create, what it looked like. Scott McNeely, who was the CEO, had this very infamous saying, "It is better to ask forgiveness than to seek permission." And that really was empowering to people like me who were all about disrupting, and we were out selling things. We were out trying to create new markets for the Sun platform. And Sun really was the first instantiation of this idea, the network is the computer. Everything was going to be connected. And we're seeing that manifest itself in greater scale today with things like IoT, for example. It's just the same extension. After I left Sun, I actually joined a startup. I was a co-founder, and that was the first real opportunity for me to experience entrepreneurship from the ground up. I left with 4 other fellows from Sun, and ostensibly we started as an ISP, where we're going to go out and we're going to connect people to the internet. And one of the things that we found is that in order to be competitive in that world, we had to find a way to not be so capital intensive. So the ISPs of the day were really driven by physical points of presence, a POP, where you could dial into a phone number. And it was all about getting, in the US anyway, it was all about getting the local phone call so you didn't have a long distance toll call. So we created a virtual phone system, basically, where you could take any phone number and reroute it to a central hub. And it was quite innovative at the time, very innovative. In fact, it was so innovative that we were ultimately acquired by one of the larger ISPs that was growing. They adopted some of our technology and our platform. And we scaled up, and that company ultimately went public, and then again it was bought. And it was a very successful ride. It was driven by the marketplace. And this was one of the things that, as a young person, I did not really truly appreciate, which was the external pressures of the market demand for being connected to the internet. We were supplying that demand. We weren't out creating it. It was a frickin' tidal wave, and we were at the front end of it. It was great timing. And then I had real disruption. I became a father. I have anybody who's lived through this understands. I have 3 wonderful daughters. They're almost all grown up now and out of the house. But I had the good fortune to be able to spend some time with them. And as a result, the next startup I did was a lifestyle startup, one that allowed me to accommodate being a full-time parent, or a mostly full-time parent, and being able to stay engaged in technology. And for me, that was a big deal. So in this capacity, I was much more of a participant in the disruptive kind of components of the mass adoption of distributed computing. And I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, but at the end of the day, it really didn't leave me satisfied in terms of my constant desire for seeing new things. And that led me to kind of jump to the dark side, as you will. I became an investor. And I actually now realize the benefit of having seen the eyes of what an investor goes through. As a follow-on entrepreneur now, I have a much better appreciation of their job and why it's so difficult. It is hard to pick good teams. It's hard to find good companies. It's hard to find good disruptive opportunities. And one of the things that we did was we fundamentally started fishing. That was our premise. We were going to fish where other people weren't fishing. And I think it's an appropriate analogy since I'm talking to one of the fishing capitals of the world here. But we actually were one of the first investors in, like a matter of fact, the first class that came out of Techstars, I invested in a company called Filterbox. And that's how I got to know the Techstars team, because we were actually investing in Boulder. I lived in Albuquerque, and I'm investing in the Mountain West, much like Mark. And that was a great experience. I mean, I really understood, I got the sense of how you build an investment practice, how you create a value out of those investments, and the entire full spectrum process of startup to exit. But the difference was I got to see it through the eyes and interactions of all of the other entrepreneurs, and it was very diverse. Did everything from software, some hardware even, and even in some clean tech plays. So it was great. We also lived through the Great Recession. Finally, I got to PureColor, and PureColor was really about clean chemistry. It was this idea that you can bring a non-toxic, completely odorless solution to the world of wood stain, which if anybody's worked with wood stain, they know it actually stinks. And this time I did this as a startup CEO, and I will tell you that that's been another big learning process, just the growth of starting a company from the ground up. So what have I learned about disruption? First off, innovation is not a feature. It's better, faster, cheaper, but it's not just a feature. It has to be something core. It's much greater than that. In order to disrupt entrenched markets, oftentimes it requires you to create new playing fields, create new rules. So for example, at PureColor, we actually ship our product, it's over 90% water. We actually ship our product in concentrate and have our customers just add water when they're ready to use it. That saves on shipping costs. It certainly saves on manufacturing costs, right? That's the big thing. So we actually manufacture a gallon of stain and the customer buys 5 gallons of stain. And the other thing I'll say is when you're looking at disruption, the fastest path to adoption is helping your customers drive incremental revenue. It's new revenue. One of the big challenges as a startup in competing in the big marketplace against large competitors is that they have to trust you. Well, it's a lot easier to trust you if the revenue that you're going to represent is all new revenue to them. It's like business development as opposed to try to replace somebody that's got an entrenched foot. If I look at innovation, I really see it boiling down to 3 basic elements. There's innovation that's true technology innovation, and that's things like nanoscience, nanotechnology. It could be like TCP/IP in the internet space. It could be a product, which I see as an application of the technology. That's like the Sun computer, or even our products at PureColor. And then there's a business model kind of disruption, and I'll characterize Uber in that kind of category. The element that's the most difficult to manage and the biggest challenge for any entrepreneur in my mind is timing. And timing comes down to the market timing. The internet, the .com era, that was a tidal wave. Timed that beautifully. It was wonderful. Here at PureColor, it's really been more about trade wins. I got some nice trade wins in my back. People want green, they want sustainable. That's wonderful. But it's not like a big tidal wave. I actually have to go out and create demand for my customers. They're not calling me. There's obviously economics, macroeconomics like the Great Recession. That certainly impacted a lot of businesses. The number one thing from timing though, it's all about the team. And it's going to be the people that you're able to surround yourself with, not just on your internal team, but all the people that are an extension of your team, and that's your investors, picking the right investors. That's so critical. Picking advisors, getting the right board members. And here I've actually put down customers. You got to pick the right customers as well, and that's a lot of the timing. And there's, a healthy dose of luck. Lastly, entrepreneurship. There's a big difference in my mind between learning and growing. I can learn about a market, I can learn a technology, I can learn a product, but you grow because you're self-aware and you're willing to extend and challenge yourself. And I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, the one thing that you have to be willing to do is constantly change and grow yourself. And sometimes it's really hard because you have to be honest with yourself about what you're good at and what you're not. I'm a big believer in thinking different, being different, and truly making a difference. And one of the things that drives me about PureColor is I know we're making a difference in the world, not just in the way like I did where I was disrupting communications, but here we're changing the way people are actually using products. Instead of being toxic, they're now completely clean and green. And finally, entrepreneurship, it's a team sport. It's not an individual. You might be a significant entrepreneur, but you're not going to do it without a team. And it's all about you creating that impassioned leadership, a belief and a conviction that allows other people to believe in you and achieve success and make a big impact on this world. So there we go. Thanks very much. I appreciate the time, and I'll leave it at that.